Hello friends, welcome into the Cowboys Report presented by BetDSI, the internet's #1 sportsbook. I am your host Tom Downey, here to take a look at the top defensive free agent targets for the Dallas Cowboys in 2019 NFL free agency. Now, the Cowboys do have plenty of money to spend this year. They are not in cap hell this year, but re-signing their own players remains the top priority. They want to make sure they bring back Demarcus Lawrence and other players. However, they could still go sign maybe one bigger name free agent. Maybe they go for a safety or defensive tackle. But there are some options out there for the Dallas Cowboys if they want to get aggressive and go a little bit more all in on the 2019 season. So we'll walk you through 20 different players you could see the Cowboys target on defense this offseason. Of course, only players not on their roster count, i.e. no Demarcus Lawrence, who is set to be a free agent. He is the focal point of the Cowboys' entire defensive strategy. They want to bring him back. A franchise tag could still be the worst case type scenario, but we'll focus in on defensive end to start, namely some backup options if Demarcus Lawrence leaves. First up, Brandon Graham of the Philadelphia Eagles. Had only 4 sacks last year, but still put plenty of pressure on the quarterback, plenty of hurries, and still more in line with his average, about 7 sacks per year based on the hurry numbers. He is going to turn 31 in April. In the end, I think he's only a target option if Demarcus Lawrence leaves. Now, one guy who could still technically be an option if the Cowboys bring back Tank is Trey Flowers. He's been a steady 7-sack player since 2016, around that range. Brings plenty of ability against the run as well as a very solid defender against the run. He could play defensive end, or why he makes sense maybe if the Cowboys still bring back Lawrence, he could play some 3 technique, be maybe an upgraded version of Tyrann Crawford, for example. In the end, I think he'll get more money and more playing time elsewhere, but if the Cowboys lose Tank, Flowers, I think, becomes their go-to target. So overall with defensive end, what should the Cowboys do? Type R to just re-sign Lawrence, or type S for sign a free agent or free agents? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. For me, it's a no-brainer. Go re-sign Demarcus Lawrence. If you feel otherwise, I'm open to other ideas. I just can't come up with a better one than bringing back Demarcus Lawrence. Let's move now to defensive tackle, where you have Landon Collins set in, Tyrann Crawford, for now Antwaun Woods, and then that's kind of it in terms of reliable guys that could be a true starter for you. How about Malcolm Brown, who has been a run stuffer for the Patriots? I know you Texans fans remember him, but he doesn't bring pass rush. 8.5 career sacks, actually coming off a fairly down year, which might make him a cheap option for the Cowboys. I don't think he's the route to go there for Dallas. I think he's an option, but I think he's still going to be a little bit too expensive. Now, a cheaper option is a guy that you guys should know as well. Terrell McClain. Played for the Cowboys from 2014 to 2016, and Dallas tried to sign him last offseason, and then the Falcons offered him more money. He went to Atlanta. He still plays a very similar role. He provides some cheap depth at the one technique, something I think Dallas needs, because outside of Antwaun Woods, who are you going with there? I don't think there are enough options. So McClain, who would probably be a later signing, not like a day one guy, could be that cheap depth who knows the system. Now, we know this show is not possible without you guys. Here are some of our recent Cowboys Report subscribers: Shannon Doherty, Toto Bryan Jr., Warren Streen, Douglas Neely Sr., I have a senior and a junior there, and Terrell Eccles. Now, I see too many just stock YouTube photos, so I'm borrowing something from my friend Mitch here. We gave you photos. Sharon Daugherty becomes a pastor of some type. Toto Bryan becomes the Weezer frontman because, well, you type in Toto, guess what happens to pop up on Google Images. And then Douglas Neely Sr. becomes a medical professional. So congratulations all you guys for whatever you do in real life. That's what you do here on the Cowboys Report. Thank you guys for subscribing. And by the way, if you want to be featured on the show, make sure you turn on YouTube notifications. We'll take our fan rumors and mailbag stuff from those who comment first. Easy way to do that, make sure you have notifications turned on. Back to some defensive free agent targets. How about Sheldon Richardson? Now, the Cowboys have had interest in the past, but he's going to be a little bit more expensive this time around. And after a one-year prove-it type deal last year, I think Richardson wants a longer-term option and longer-term deal this time around. 49 tackles, 4.5 sacks. Not elite production, not Aaron Donald production, but for a defensive tackle, that'll typically get you a decent amount of money. Especially compared to guys like Danny Shelton, the NFL craves pass rushers. Danny Shelton is not that. 1.5 career sacks for an mid-first round pick. has been a disappointment. Can stuff the run, but the Cowboys don't value the one technique. I don't think you're going to see them throw big money, if any money, at Danny Shelton. Next up, Ndamukong Suh stepped his play up in the playoffs, as we know all too well. Hasn't been quite as disruptive as he was in the past. He could frankly be looking at his last big contract. And for Suh, I don't think that money is going to come necessarily from the Dallas Cowboys. Now, if he wants to take a little bit less money to go play for a contender like the Cowboys, then sign me up there. He would bring that truly dynamic presence in the middle of the defensive line that the Cowboys don't really have because David Irving doesn't really count. But Suh might be the biggest target there among the guys who are currently free agents. Gerald McCoy does not count. He has not yet been cut. Therefore, he's not a free agent, for those of you wondering about him. Now, when it comes to defensive tackle, what do you want the Cowboys to do? Type 1 for draft a DT or Type 2 for sign a defensive tackle. I'm open to both. I would prefer to go a little bit cheaper. How about you draft a DT early, round 2, round 3? It's a solid class. That'd be my preferred option there. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. We'll get back to some more defensive free agent targets, but first, today's show is brought to you by BetDSI. Head over to chatsports.com/bet and use promo code Cowboys120 for a 120% deposit bonus. You put down $50, they're going to give you $60 for free. Put down $100, and you get a 120% bonus there. That's the best deal out there for sports betting, so get in now at chatsports.com/bet with that promo code Cowboys120. We'll move now to the linebacker situation where your top two very clearly set. Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch. But Damian Wilson and JML, they are both free agents. That opens up a bit of a need at the strong side linebacker spot unless Chris Covington, who hardly played last year, is ready to step up, which I don't quite think he is yet. And depth could be needed as well because Sean Lee's could very well be cut, and Joe Thomas is a backup as well. If Smith or Vander Esch get hurt, all of a sudden, you're in a bit of a rough spot there. So here are some cheaper linebacker options because the Cowboys are not going to spend big money at linebacker, so don't worry about Anthony Barr. That's just not going to happen, or Quan Alexander. Stephon Anthony first up here. This is what I call the Will McClay special. Oh, you were a high draft pick and you busted out? Come to Dallas. We'll give you a second chance. Jihad Ward, Marcus Martin, Dayton Jones, all in recent memory. And Anthony, a former first-round pick by the Saints, quickly fell out of favor, has not developed very well, but he could be an option at the strong side linebacker spot. We'll mostly help out on special teams. Speaking of special teams, that's Marquise Flowers' best role. That's what he does best. That's why Bill Belichick traded for him. Of course, he didn't last all that long, but it still counts. Bounced around with the Lions, the Redskins, and the Patriots. A cheap option who plays special teams. Think of him as an extra Joe Thomas type linebacker. Now, I mentioned the Sam linebacker spot. That's where Kyle Emanuel could fit in. He's had some starting reps for the Chargers, and he's been okay. He's nothing special, right? Like, if you want a player in terms of impact, maybe a Kyle Wilbur, although maybe not even quite as good on special teams as Wilbur has been. But if Damian Wilson leaves, Emanuel makes sense as a veteran who can just plug in as a stopgap for maybe 1 year if you still think Chris Covington is going to be the guy long term. And then one last linebacker, Manti Te'o, and limited his 5 games last year, a relatively big name. Played, of course, at Notre Dame, had a fake girlfriend who never actually existed, and he never lived up to expectations either. Now, he would be a cheap depth option for the Dallas Cowboys, a little bit older than some of the guys the Cowboys could target at linebacker, and probably not a guy you ever really want starting. Remember when he was in the Heisman race? Yeah, he hasn't become that player in the NFL. So I'm open to the idea here of Manti Te'o coming to the Cowboys, but it would be a cheap 1-year deal, and frankly, no money guaranteed. If you bring him in, he's not a guy you're guaranteeing a roster spot. I know he was a former big name. He hasn't played like that, though, in the NFL. We'll get to the secondary, but first, guys, I'm wearing a Mizzen and Main shirt like I always do. Go check them out, comfortable.af. You will not find a better shirt, a better dress shirt, better sweaters even, than the ones on Mizzen and Main. They're made right here in America, which is just perfect for America's team. To the secondary now, and the Cowboys are in good shape for this coming season at cornerback. Byron, Cheetah Bay, Anthony Brown, Jordan Lewis, they're all locked in. But then free agency is approaching for Byron Jones, for Anthony Brown, and then Awuzie and Lewis. So you could look for another number 5 corner. They kind of like C.J. Goodwin in that role for special teams. But you could go for some corner depth, both as a cheap veteran option and, by the way, in the draft, which I think is where they'll really focus. And then at safety, Xavier Woods is one guy, but you need an impact player as well, hopefully, to pair with him. Now about the corners, how much do you trust them? Grade on a scale of 1 to 10. Overall, I feel pretty good about them. I'm going to give it an 8 or a 9, and it's not perfect by any means, but you got 4 guys that I think can play at least number 3 role snaps for you. Jordan Lewis, Anthony Brown have been good number 3s. Chidobe Awuzie has shown enough as a number 2, and yes, he kind of struggled a bit down the stretch, but Byron Jones was a number 1 cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys last year. So overall, I feel good about where the Cowboys sit at corner, but then again, you can never have too many corners on a roster in today's very pass-happy NFL. So we'll look now at some cheap veteran options at the cornerback spot. A common theme here is the connection to Chris Richard. So we'll start things off with Deshaun Shedd. And played under Richard in Seattle for a long time, 2012 to 2017, was a starter, and then got hurt and never quite became the same guy, but he's a buy low option as a cornerback that does fit the scheme. Bring him in, let him compete. Worst case scenario, you cut him for no dead money. Best case scenario, you have extra depth at the corner spot. Same is true now with Nico Thorpe, and he played under Richard for only 2016, 2017, has always been a backup special team type guy, but he can compete with C.J. Goodwin for that role as that number 5 corner who mostly plays on special teams, and I think fits this scheme about as well as C.J. Goodwin does. And of course, Chris Richard knows him, so that's the common theme I was going there for when it comes to the cornerbacks. Again, folks, today's show is brought to you by BetDSI, the internet's number 1 sportsbook. Head over to chatsports.com/bet. Use promo code Cowboys120 for a 120% deposit bonus. So you put down $50, they're going to give you $60 for free. Put down $100, and they're going to give you $120. You're not going to find a better betting deal out there than the one on BetDSI at chatsports.com/bet. We mentioned safety very briefly, but again, safety and beyond defensive tackle, kind of the big focal point for the Cowboys. I love Xavier Woods. I like his development. Jeff Heath is a fine low-end number 2. I think he's better as a backup. Kevon Frazier barely played. The rest of those safeties are not that good. So at minimum, you need depth. In an ideal salary cap-free world, you go sign somebody big to pair with Xavier Woods and make Jeff Heath your number 3 special team star / backup kicker. The good news for the Cowboys, a lot of good safeties in the free agency class this year. First up, Adrian Amos, who I consider to be among the most underrated players in the NFL. Now, the Bears, of course, want to bring him back this offseason. The problem is, are the Cowboys going to pay, because the world is not a salary cap-free world, unfortunately, for a guy I consider a second-tier safety? He's not Earl Thomas. He's not Tyrann Mathieu. He's not Landon Collins, but if he hits the open market, he's going to get, I think, a pretty decent payday as a good, strong safety. I don't know if the Cowboys are going to value that role that much. If they do, look for Adrian Amos as I'll call him again, a tier 2 option, not quite the home run, the big name that everyone's used to. Also a second-tier safety, maybe even third tier, is Trey Boston, who has shown playmaking ability, but he's going to be more cost-effective than Landon Collins, than Earl Thomas, than Tyrann Mathieu, than Adrian Amos. And I am very curious how the free agent safety market works this year, because last year it didn't exist. Trey Boston couldn't get signed. Kenny Vaccaro couldn't get signed. Eric Reed couldn't get signed. Now Eric Reed has signed a deal worth over $7 million per year. If I'm Trey Boston, that's kind of what I'm asking for. And maybe the Cardinals pay him, maybe they don't. Either way, I think you'll see him hit the open market. If I'm the Cowboys, I definitely show interest in him because he can do strong safety and free safety. Now, in some of our recent live videos, we've had some Cowboys Report Super Chats. Thank you guys for your donations there. Jeremy Bramlett, big old $12 there. Thank you, my man. Frank the Tank, $2. Jackson Grace, about $2 as well. And Leon Vio, 99 cents as well. Now, I remember Jackson Grace's comment in particular because it was about Landon Collins, and that's our next defensive free agent target. His question basically asked, could the Cowboys sign him? I'd like it. The problem is the Giants aren't stupid. Even though it's fun to make fun of them, they aren't stupid in general. They know they have a premier safety in Landon Collins. I fully expect if they don't get a long-term deal done before the start of free agency or before the franchise tag deadline ends, they're going to tag Collins. And maybe that makes both sense for both sides. Landon's coming off some injury problems, wasn't as good as he was in 2017. But Collins, if I could get him, I'd love to do it. I think he'd be a fantastic fit alongside Xavier Woods. So which safety would you rather sign? You can pick one. Money's not a problem. We'll just assume that they cost the same. Which one are you going with? Type LC for Landon Collins. Type ET for Earl Thomas. DM me on Twitter if you guys want my answer. Next up on the safety front, Lamarcus Joyner, who can play free safety, but has played nickel and linebacker and strong safety, and heck, even edge rusher at times for the Rams. He can do a little bit of everything for you. He was better in 2017. I still thought he fared fine, although to be frank, John Johnson was the best Rams defensive back last year, which I don't think many saw coming. Now, for the Rams, much like Ndamukong Suh, they can't actually re-sign everybody. That might allow Joyner to hit the open market. If so, the Cowboys, if they want to spend money at safety, should have interest. Now, last year, I think the Cowboys messed up by not going after Tyrann Mathieu. I think he would have been a fantastic fit. I think he signed for less than the Cowboys thought he was going to get. And when healthy, he is among the best safeties in the NFL. The big problem is he has a lengthy injury history. I think that's going to scare away some teams, because do you want to throw a bunch of big money and guaranteed money at a player who might get hurt after 1 year? It's a reasonable fear to have. For Mathieu, meanwhile, Houston has plenty of money. They're probably going to tag Clowney, so he could hit the open market. And he's made it fairly clear on social media that after taking a discount last year, now he wants to get paid. There will be several teams in a bidding war, I think, for Tyrann Mathieu. Also, the possibility for a bidding war involves Earl Thomas. Of course, we're going to get to him. You guys knew that one, right? 2018, cut short by a fractured leg. He's been very vocal about his desire to be paid. So here's my question. Does Earl Thomas want to get the most money he can get on the open market? If so, I don't think he signs with the Dallas Cowboys. I think the 49ers, the Raiders, maybe the Chiefs, several other teams out there make more sense on that front for Earl Thomas. But if he wants to play for a winner, and if he wants to play in the state of Texas, if he wants to play for his childhood favorite team of the Dallas Cowboys, would he take just a little bit less money to get what he wants on that front? I think that there is at least a chance of it. I do expect the Cowboys to make a run at Earl Thomas, but the money might get a little bit too expensive. So, what is the most you would pay Earl Thomas per year? Is it $8 million, $9 million, $10 million, $11 million, $12 million, $13 million? Let me know in the comment section what's the most money per year you would be willing to pay Earl Thomas. And DM me on Twitter at WhatGoingDown if you want to hear my answer, because I have a specific number in mind. One last safety. I told you to do it last year, Cowboys. Kenny Vaccaro, guess what? He played very well for the Tennessee Titans. Cowboys didn't sign him last year because he wasn't a scheme fit. Never mind that a year before that they almost traded Orlando Scandrick for him. I don't think Vaccaro gets to the Cowboys in free agency this year. I think he's going to re-sign with Tennessee. He and Kevin Byard are a really good 1-2 punch there. So I like Vaccaro a lot. I just don't expect you're going to see him end up hitting the open market. I think he's the true open market. I think he'll work out an extension with Tennessee. Maybe he takes some visits because it's nice to be wined and dined if you're an NFL free agent. But I don't think he ends up leaving Tennessee. All right, let's recap then my top defensive free agent targets in 2019 for the Dallas Cowboys. Some defensive linemen: Brandon Graham, Trey Flowers, Malcolm Brown, Terrell McClain, and Sheldon Richardson. A couple more D linemen. Surprise, it's a focus, right? Danny Shelton and Ndamukong Suh. At linebacker, Stephon Anthony, Marquise Flowers, Kyle Emmanuel, and Manti Te'o are all cheaper options for them, just for some depth purposes. So too with cornerback, Deshaun Shedd and Nico Thorpe. Then at safety, some big names to watch out for. Adrian Amos, Trey Boston is on there. Landon Collins, Lamarcus Joyner, Tyrann Mathieu, Earl Thomas. Heck, all those guys instantly become the number one safety, I think by a significant margin, on the Cowboys roster. And then, of course, Kenny Vaccaro. Now, if you could sign one defensive free agent, who would it be? Any name you want. Money is no object. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Again, money's not a problem there, so let me know what you guys think. Hey Cowboys fans, thanks for watching the Cowboys Report. If you haven't already, click right here to subscribe to our channel for all the best Cowboys coverage on the internet. That's news, rumors, highlights, mailbags, film studies, and a whole lot more. And I'm making your lives a little bit easier as well with the next Cowboys Report video right here.